everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dance Talk Realness, a podcast where we discuss all nuances concerning education and dance because the dance experience is an experience worth talking about. I'm your host, Truly B, and I'm here with my awesome, as always, co-host, Daryl P. Hey. And today we are going to be discussing a post that I saw on IG by a page I follow, Dance Ed Tips. And the little slide is non-movement things dance teachers should teach. Full transparency. I had a moment where I definitely read that as teach virtually, and that word ain't in there at all. It's like, I'm tired. So I'm like, as I read it out loud, I'm like, oh, they just mean in general, which makes complete sense now. It makes sense now. Okay. So I'll just share each one. It's only 5 points. And so I'll share each one and then we'll just kind of share our thoughts on them.
Yeah.
All right. So the first non-movement thing they say dance teachers should teach is dance class etiquette. I'll let you start off.
Yeah. I definitely think dance class etiquette is important. Um, just for, sake of, just your own class, right? Your own class management and appearance. If you have guests or anybody come in, you want your students to know and look like dancers, right? But I think also too for your dancers when they are going out to audition or they eventually go and join collegiate or companies that they are aware of those norms. And I feel like, dance class etiquette is pretty standard, right? Like I don't think there's not too many. I mean, I would say if you asked every dance teacher name like the top um, three dance class etiquettes, like I feel like those three, maybe not in the exact same order, but would be a similar three, right? So let's see, what would be your top three dance class etiquette? Let's see.
My number one is no shoes in the studio. Like never off the rip, and people hate it, but I'd be like, it is. That's always number one. Number two, no food or drink in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And then my third, because I harp on those two real tough. My third usually shifts around, but I think currently what my third one would be, if we were able to be sharing space again, it will probably be just the usual, be respectful of other dancers in the space.
Yeah.
Them first two are like my go-to always, right, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think those are always like everybody's, outside of like attire, right? Like I think those are the things you think about like dance studios. Like I feel like those are like the key things. Yeah. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I agree. Because I know outside of, like you said, like outside of like dressing out proper attire, because I know for me, collegiate level, that shifted, which was an interesting shift. That was kind of a rough adjustment because I'm just like, oh, y'all just really out here dressing how y'all gonna dress. But I'm like, it's also college. So I'm like, okay, this is not a conservatory. Let me ease up. Everybody ain't got no money to go like get themselves together for this class. And I currently am nowhere where there's a dance major. So me really requiring some of the attire, I'm like, let me not bother doing that. Let me just focus on teaching as best as I can. But I always assumed people really taught dance class etiquette. And then I started realizing that not true. outside of like those standard, like the shoes, no food or drink, like the clapping at the end of class. Everyone doesn't teach that. And I do. And so it's always interesting to me when I get new students who they're like, what are we doing? And so like I explain to them how it was explained to me. I don't know if it's correct, but it's what I was taught. Like, you're not clapping to say you necessarily enjoyed everything and that everything was perfect. I was like, but you're just a show of appreciation for the space, for the teacher, for the other dancers sharing the space with you, and for yourself for making it through. But everybody doesn't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh my God. Another thing people, well, maybe they do and students just don't be listening, but like talking. I'm like, why are you talking at the bar? Why are you talking during warm up? Like, why are you talking when we're going across the floor?
Yeah.
And I think, I used to harass kids about that a lot. I'm like, and so even in college, I harassed them about that because I don't like it. But like, I'll usually, my compromise is if I'm not instructing, you can talk. But anytime I am instructing, there's no talking. And I'm like, it's not because I'm trying to be anal. I was like, but literally I'm instructing. And I will be pissed if you ask me a question and don't ask me what we doing. And I just explained it. What were you doing when I was explaining? You was talking, sad story. You better figure it out. Good luck. Right. So that's weird to me that's not as standard as it should be. In my opinion, I would say. But even the I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like the framing of taking class and the importance of that etiquette. I really try to impress that upon my students, regardless of the level. I've always tried to push that. And all the more reason why I agree it should be taught is because I have seen others who don't really, or, for whatever reason, maybe they're overwhelmed, they're tired. They're like, well, these kids don't want to be here. And I'm like, fuck these kids. I don't care if you want to be here or not. I said, this is what we're doing. So either you figure out how you're going to get out my class or you figure out how you're going to fall in line. Like pick one of these things. Like, because if you meet me part way, follow these instructions, I can work with you. But some people just, to me, it seems like just kind of give up and throw that out the window and then be mad when their kids embarrass them when somebody come to observe or like they take the student somewhere. And I'm like, but you didn't really stress how important it was to follow some of these general etiquette things that majority of people have in place in the dance world. So, yeah. All right, let's see. Number 2 is celebrating your classmates' success. Okay, I'll start this one. I think I agree. And I know before I left the school system, like when they were like really starting to introduce the it's a little book. What's her name? It just left my entire head. Is it Liz Lerman? Is that who I'm thinking of? Say again.
Critical response.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so like knowing how to look at movement and how to give the actual feedback and like how to talk about it, I'm like, yes. Because I think part of celebrating like the successes of your classmates is being able to speak to the work. Because to me, it's useless to say, oh, you did a great job. I did a great job at what? Like what specifically was great? Not even solely for ego, but like, no, let me know so I know that that's a thing. Like, okay, you did that well. You can set that to the side. You got that. All right, now we can look at the things that we need to like continue developing. Um, I don't I don't think that it has to be a separate type of thing. It should be just built in. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like when they're younger, you can definitely be like, okay. So like I think maybe starting with like when people do like showings for the class, we do like small groups and just the clapping for them. And just like, yay, you did it. You survived. Whether it was good or not. Like you survived. Good job. Um, and then as they get older, starting to interject just naturally ways that they can communicate exactly what it is that they're seeing, that they're like, yes, that was it. That was good. Like, I enjoyed seeing this. Because that to me is more beneficial, even like grown adult getting feedback. It is more beneficial to me for you to say what I need to focus on. But if you're going to give me a compliment, tell me exactly what you're complimenting. Don't just say it was nice or it was good. I'm like, but what about it was? So I know to kind of keep that going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely think like, I think one thing that came to mind is like, going across the floor or like, like you said, the small groups. But I think those are great moments for your classmates to really kind of see the things that you were doing. But, I think also, sometimes it feels like, that one student that does something well, right? And sometimes maybe they do it well all the time. They do whatever the teacher gives them, they do it well. And so they become like that point person. Student A, show us that movement. Student A, all right, this phrase for the class, and then sometimes I feel like in the dance world, what we have to remember as educators is, to spread that wealth, right? Like
Mm,
I have um, to celebrate your classmates' achievement. But I also think, sometimes we focus more so on that student who's getting it just right all the time. And maybe not so much on that student who's like, you know what? That passe and that single pirouette was finally perfect.
yeah.
You know, or what, you didn't make it all the way around, but your toe was connected. Good
Hmm.
job. Like those are things that I think we should, and I'm saying this out loud because I'm not saying to myself, like I get stuck in that, like, looking for that perfection and really calling that out as opposed to um, those incremental like achievements that hopefully will then help build that student up.
Yeah. And I think part of it is it's so much easier to just focus in on the ones who get it
Mm.
and it comes easy to them. It's so much easier to praise the ones who are always on top of it. Um, and it shouldn't be difficult to find the positive in the ones who are working.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's part of where I push back. I'm choosing words because I'm tired and my filter is slowly dissipating. So I'm trying. So I push back against those educators who constantly want the easy route. And that's it. Because I'm like, what you here for? Like, we need people who are willing to push and who
Mm.
are willing to like see that kid who is struggling, but they made progress from the last class. And like from the first
Mm.
time you met them, like they didn't know right from left. And now they can do a clean single pirouette. Like, can they do a triple yet into a calypso and like all that? No, they cannot.
Mm.
But they are growing and they are achieving little successes along the way. And I'm like, if you can't see that and enjoy that, I don't really know that this is the best field because you're going to
Right.
get more of those than anything else, unless you are fortunate to only be with people who have always had a teacher before you. Um, and it's not that I dislike people having a teacher before me,
Mhm.
because like some people be having really awesome teachers, and I'm just like, yes, I am so glad that this worked out because now we can do XYZ. But it is not a goal of mine to always just kind of coast on somebody else's coattails. I'm like, I know I'm fucking epic at teaching. So I'm like, I don't need you to come from somebody else already great. I can get you there myself. Now, if you came there like that, cool. We gonna keep pushing. But if you
Yeah.
didn't, I'm gonna catch you up to the people who are like in your range. So yeah, it's and that's a shot at teachers, TBH, but it's fine.
That's fine.
Ah,
Good to hear that. Sometimes it's that bringing that back, you get so used to or wrapped up in like these expectations or like for yourself or for your students. And, like I think we lose sight of the ones, I have some students here that are very talented that had nothing to do with me teaching them. I inherited them from several other places, right? But I
mhm.
think sometimes for me, it's the ones who are homegrown that like came in here day one and was like, what class is this?
Yes, those be the ones. Be like,
Yeah,
Lord.
like what? You want me to do that? I don't. My body don't do that. Like those are the ones that I feel
Yeah,
like in the end, when you see how far they've grown, is yeah, it's like that's the reason why you keep coming back. That's the reason why you're like, oh, I
yes.
for years.
Like that. That to me is so much more fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
Is to see that progress and that growth over you. You are already great. I'm just helping you maintain and maybe get a couple more things under your belt, but I like seeing them grow.
Yeah.
All right. So, number 3, the importance of a good warm up.
Yeah. Yes. I I think just all the injuries that I can imagine that I have experienced in all of my teaching has always could be back from the kids did not warm up well. They were not prepared to move.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so therefore they encountered several injuries, right? And I think some of that is on the teacher. I think teachers need to make sure that they're providing their students with adequate time to warm up. And I know sometimes, if you're teaching like a 50-minute class or a 60-minute class, like I'm teaching a 60-minute class tomorrow, and I'm just thinking, wow, a great a good warm up would take up a good chunk of our time that we have
Mm-hmm.
together. Um, but and thinking of interesting ways in which to incorporate a lot of movement, maybe even movement from what you're going to do later on into that warm up to help really solidify and prepare the body to move. So yes, I think teaching the importance of a good warm up is great. But what I will say to that is that as an adult, sometimes I don't feel like I have. I feel like there was a moment in my adult life where I would say maybe from ages like, and who knows, maybe because I'm feeling these ailments now is because I didn't properly warm up back then. But there were those moments, in your 20s, early 20s, maybe early 30s, where you were like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do it. And then they could dance and dance and dance and dance and dance and feel great afterwards. But now, no, I can't do that. I need you to give me a minute.
Look, I need you to give me all the minutes because I'm like, child, and I still to this day don't be warming up for real. unless
Yeah.
I'm teaching a warm up or doing the warm up with my classes. Is I'm very much a do as I say, not as I do type of person, apparently. But yeah, I agree that there's so many times that an injury has occurred that it's like, dang, that probably could have been avoided if you would have warmed up properly. And it always feels as though the warm up is taking away time from
Right.
doing all the things you need to get done. So I am a fan of making warm ups that are more integrated into the movement. Um, I be blowing these kids because they be like, sis, this is a dance. And I'm like, it's the warm up though. So I will choreograph
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
like at least 2 to 3 whole songs choreographed. And they're like, this is choreography. And I'm like, this is the warm up. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Are you warm though? Are you
Yeah.
good? And they're like, yes, but we just learned choreography. Like starting off the semester, they're like, oh, is this the first assessment? I was like, baby, no, this is just the warm up. I haven't gotten to the choreography yet. They're like, what you mean? And I was like, I said it. I said what I said. I didn't. My bad. But it helps to minus the fact that you'll be repeating it over and over, and you know good and well it's a doggone warm up. But it kind of helps to minimize that feeling of I just keep doing the same thing over and over. And like, can we just get to the dancing? Because I know very much that was my mindset often. It was the same with me in music too, though, that I wouldn't warm up. I would just be like, can I just play the music? Like, this is boring. I don't want to. But whenever we had warm ups that were actual songs, that helped. And so wow, that just registered. So I think that's where I carried that over from, is that I was always more interested in warming up when we were playing actual songs. And so now I'm okay warming up when it's like actual choreography. Like my go-to that I need to re-record these things too, so I don't lose this footage again, changing schools. But I have like my alphabet phrases. And so far I was up to letter G before, but I don't think I'm up to there no more. I know I'm up to letter E. So I might add some more next year. We'll see how I feel about that. But each phrase is like 32 counts. And just takes you through a bunch of stuff. So like one phrase, like phrase B has leg swings. There's like a little chasse jump situation happens to the floor, roll, stand up. We have some hinges in there. And some échappés. Just stuff is in there. Like phrase A, I think has drop swings, then leg swings on the floor. Then I don't know what this is called, but where you're like body X on the floor and like you make it like a C and you're doing like the oblique contractions. Yeah. And so it's just like a hodgepodge of things and they're like little mini phrases. And I didn't do it this semester, or I didn't do this school year because of virtual, but like in person, once I teach them the phrases, I'm like, this is your warm up for the whole year or semester, however long I have you. And I'll mix it up. So today it might be, okay, right side BAC, left side CAB. I'm like, take a second, think about what that means for transitions. All right, now I'm gonna play whatever random song I feel like listening to today. And so I would change music, change the order, just to kind of give them some more variety, because it's gonna be the same phrases over and over, but at least we're mixing it up somewhat to kind of keep it fresh. Because they don't like doing the warm up. And I noticed that students will start to kind of slack on doing it because they see the warm up as something that is like, it can be thrown away. I don't need it. so much. I just want to move. And I'm like, okay, well, let me give you something that will more so ease you into this movement and get the body really prepared, but that still keeps your attention. So,
Right.
yeah, that is a thing. Alrighty. So, number 4, the idea that skills layer on top of each other. Okay, so look, this is what I don't understand. I don't understand why anyone has to teach that. That should be understood.
Right.
Like, you don't come out the womb reading Shakespeare. You don't come out writing dissertations. You have to learn fundamental skills and then you build upon those.
Right.
And it's like people really just do not get it. They do not see it. And it boggles the mind. I'm like, I need you to be able to hold your core consistently before I have you do stuff where I want you to be more off center and more loose. I need you to know where that is. I need you to know how to activate that. I need you to be able to find it.
Yeah.
So when I tell you to leave that place, you know how to get back to it.
Right.
Like the same with teaching, let's say, let's go with like sautés.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, a plie will always save your life.
Right.
And folks don't be wanting to spend time on a good, deep, elastic plie. Folks don't want to spend time on working on it. And I'm like, I've been folks. I've not wanted to spend time on plies before. I've been there. But I'm like, I need you to really understand how this plie works, how that alignment works. So when I have you leave the floor and say you're landing in a demi plie, you understand and you can get your body there and you are less likely to get injured because you built from the ground up instead of just going for it.
Right.
But it's like nobody wants to do the groundwork. Nobody wants to build the foundation. Everybody just wants to build the house. And I'm like, your house gonna crumble. That's why your ankle be falling off. That's why your knee all messed up. That's why your hip gone, because you don't have the foundation. And it irks my soul, particularly when you get students who they come from somebody else who was okay not really stressing the foundation, and then you have the audacity to check them on something that's foundational.
Mm-hmm.
And then they be like, well, I already know why are we going through this? I already know how to, and I'm like, go ahead and roll your ankle if you want to. I'm just sitting here trying to keep you safe and make sure you do all this correctly. Go ahead, bust your knee. Go ahead. Because all I'm going to do is look at you like, that is tragic. You know what would have stopped that? Doing what I told you to do. Foundations. So yes, I am very much about that life. I'm like, no. You build skills. It's just dumb that people don't get it.
Right.
It's dumb. Like I didn't come out just playing trombone. Like I had to learn baby steps. I had to learn how to buzz in a mouthpiece first before I was even playing the instrument. I just had to buzz in the mouthpiece. And then I had to learn the fingering chart. And then we had to learn how to match these pitches. And then I had to be able to read music. And then I had to be able to read easy music. And then I'm like, it's like that with everything. It's like that literally with everything. And people be coming to dance like, oh, but it's just dance. I'm like, okay, well, you just gonna bust your ass and I'm just gonna look at you. Clearly I'm upset about this. Because it's like, y'all really be out here.
Right, because it's always something that like if one teacher does it and another teacher, if one teacher doesn't, another teacher doesn't, then when you get those students in your classes, those are always the first ones to really challenge you on your teaching, or they become unteachable, uncoachable at that, because they feel like they have been told that they can do X, Y, Z, but it's almost like when I'm teaching pirouette. We've gone through, teaching all the things leading up to that. And I always get that one student who's like, I want to try to do two. And I'm like, okay. And so then when they get around and they get around twice, they're like, I did a double. I go, well, your foot wasn't in passe the entire time. Your foot is sickled, didn't spot, but I got it around. And they would get mad at me because I got it around twice. And it's like, no. I'm not going to hold you. I'm not going to celebrate because you felt like you rotated 2 times that you now know how to do a double pirouette. No. More than
you.
Right. And I feel like certain people, for whatever reason, will take that and be like, perfect. Okay, let me congratulate that, which, it's one of those things about like going back to what was that number 2, celebrating student successes. It's about celebrating the appropriate success, right? Like, and not, I could have said, yes, congratulations, you rotated around twice. Like, that was awesome. You're the best dancer we have in this room. But instead, I'm like, let's fix these other things that you have wrong to make it better the next time you do it.
Yeah.
It's a rough life for dance teachers, right? Because some people, I've been in a lot of trainings about like this, ways to redirect, right? And that feedback. But sometimes that feedback, and I think we've talked about this in other episodes about just sometimes that feedback just needs to be direct. There's no sugarcoating. There's no sugar in that. And yeah, so it becomes one of those things where I don't know why a teacher, an educator, director wouldn't want to teach that.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Agree. And touching back on what you said about the students can become uncoachable. I'm like, why would you do that to someone? Like, why would you set someone up to be in a position that you're the end all be all, which again, I'm pretty sure, as has been discussed multiple times, it comes down to ego. That some of these teachers want to feel as though they're the reason that the student is so great. They're the reason that if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have made it, and all this other blah, blah, blah. And I'm over here like, I just want you to be prepared. Like, that to me is one of the greatest things ever, is a student comes back and says, you were right. Like, thank you, because they were covering this information over here. And I was like, I already know that. Like, I'm good. I'm gonna be all right. And I'm like, that's all I want, is to make sure you are good.
Right.
So that idea of setting someone up to where when they go to the next place that they're now uncoachable, that to me means that reflects back on me negatively. And them, like obviously them, because they're in the situation, but it'll reflect back on me as being a poor teacher in a sense. Mm-hmm. So that's always, I dislike that, because I've had a few, particularly middle and high school, low key college, all levels. Let's just be transparent about that. All levels, I've seen that, and those are the kids who usually there is some foundational skill that I identify, and I'm like, oh, hey, make sure you do this, and they're like, and I'm like, bitch. Roll your ankle then. Roll it then. And when you roll it and come to me talking about, oh, I can't do this today, sad story for you. Your grade will be docked. Be clear. Because I tried to tell you how that could have been avoided. And it's not even like, it is low-key a shot at the teachers who are like that. But in that moment, I'm like, I don't really give a shit who your teacher was. I'm your teacher now, and I'm trying to give you some information. So whether you feel that you already know this or not, Your job is to take said information. You either apply it or you don't. That's on you. But to completely discount somebody because they're not the first teacher you had, or they're not that teacher who like beat into you that they're the end all be all, is an issue.
Right.
All right. Alrighty. So our last one, number 5, is recognizing the difference between injury pain and normal dancer soreness. Whew.
Yeah. That's like the last one, right? Like, as far as like, if it's not being taught already, like it should be something that you constantly remind. And I don't know if I necessarily teach it, more so that when it comes up finally, right? Because it comes up every year.
Mm-hmm. It does.
That like I address it and say, well, you know, you've never done this before, or you're new at this. So yes, it's gonna feel like soreness, but you know, it's not an injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the other side of that too is to understand rest in the body, because I know that we can really push these kids a lot, and I think that they need to know how to understand, read their body, know when to kind of push and when to kind of say, okay, I'm gonna pull back just a little bit, just to kind of preserve, you know, this feeling, whether it's an ache or a pain or even a soreness, right? Like I think soreness even has its place in that when you're sore but you're still trying to push, you're going to overcompensate somewhere else to kind of alleviate soreness, which will then turn into an injury. Yes. And now you're in injury pain. So it's like making sure that you understand how to just read your body.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Because you have on, like you said, like on the one hand, every year it happens. Everyone's sore at the beginning of the year. Every year it happens. Even in the higher level classes that I'm like, we all know better and we all be sore.
Yeah.
But to your point with the flip side, like knowing when you're hurt and knowing that you should stop. And as teachers, that is important to encourage. Way too often, I thankfully have not been guilty of this many times. Especially the longer I taught, was the more I was like, oh, this is not what we want. But like students who would get hurt and then be like, oh, but I still need to do this. I still have to dance. And I'm like, your leg gonna fall off. No, what you need to do is you need to rest that, let that heal, and then ease back in. Don't just jump back in, because then you're going to mess it up again and be like out for longer. But there's so many, like I had one student who was at a studio and the child has definitely sprained her ankle. Definitely sprained it. Doctor's note and everything. And at the studio, so for me, I was like, yeah, go ahead, sit over there and do this reflection, observe class, stay off of it, because we want it to heal so you can do these other performances. But at the studio, it was like, well, we have a competition coming up, so you need to dance. And so she was at the studio dancing on a sprained ankle, like doing tap, doing point. And I was like, well, that's dumb. They legit don't care about you, apparently, because what? And then it turned into a whole ordeal because I was like, okay, well, darling, if you're going to be sitting out of my class for the rest of the year because you keep getting hurt over there, I don't know that you need to be in here. This may not pan out. Like, it just may not. But also, side note, I don't think we could get away with that as easily in the school system.
I think you have to really pay attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't, and I'm not gonna lie and say that I've never told a kid, be like, but push through. Because I 100% have. Will I do it again? Probably at some point, depending upon what the injury is. I'm a good one for. I'm like, oh, your arm's broken, but are your legs? Oh, then you can do this footwork though. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you make it
Okay.
work. Or
Yeah.
like, if your ankle wrapped up, oh, but do your arms work? You better do these arms full out. So you know where we are. So when you're able to do all of it together, you at least have that part nailed down.
Right.
But I definitely grew in the sense of consistently telling my students, I'm like, if it is a genuine injury, I need you off of it. Like, don't make it worse. If you have to mark a part of the choreography because it will irritate something, then mark it for now. But
Yeah.
I don't want you to push through now, get hurt more, and now you have to be like sat out for an even longer amount of time. Um, for the soreness, I it's always fun because I ask students, I'm like, okay, how does it hurt? Explain
Mm-hmm.
how it hurts to me. I'm like, does it feel like just a general like pain, or does it feel like someone is stabbing you? And I'm like, depending upon your response, then I'm like, okay, you'll be fine. Or, okay, go
Mm-hmm.
over there, go stretch that out, or sit down. You need to stop. Um, yeah, because I've had kids dance through a lot of stuff. Like my one baby, whatever that is in your knee that you can tear. Is that ACL? Is that what that is?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, because I don't know how I passed anatomy, but we had that class and I don't be knowing that. It's my clavicle. That's all I got. Like, but 100% tore that Jade. She was in a cast and on crutches for like the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
And but when it happened, she did finish the dance.
Mm.
And I will never forget that because it was horrible, because I was backstage on headset and so I'm looking sideways. I can't see it for real, but it looked like she got dropped. And I'm like, but then the people on the set are like, oh shit. And I'm like, did she get dropped? Is she okay? Is she all right? And they're like, yeah, they dropped her. She's still dancing though. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, well, maybe she's okay. She was not okay. When I tell you, as soon as she got backstage, screaming and crying, and I
Wow.
was like, Jesus, what? And I, and like later, I was like, why didn't you exit? Like, why did you? And I'm like, it wasn't only like 8 counts left of this dance. It was a solid minute or so. Like there was a chunk of choreography left that she finished. And she said, and I felt so bad about this. She was like, well, I didn't want you to be mad that I didn't finish the dance. And I was like, because I'd be mad at folks. I ain't gonna lie.
Right.
They know me. I'd be like, the fuck were you doing? You could have
Yeah.
danced that out. But I'm like, baby, this was an instance. Like they smooth did not catch that girl. And it was, whoo, child. Like she's like grown now. But I don't know that she ever went back to like dancing for real after that. Like she was still in the program and she finished, but she was always very tentative after that.
Yeah.
But that was for me one of the wake up calls to really start pushing that idea on them in class. That I'm like, no matter what, if it is like something's wrong, stop.
Right. Yeah.
Like, however you got to get off the stage, get off the stage. However you got to exit class, exit class. But if it is a legitimate, you just got hurt, stop. Like, don't push through that. We need to stop because we don't want you to do anything that could potentially make it worse. Like,
Right.
if something's already torn or something's already like fractured, we don't want it to get exacerbated. And then you're like, done for the count, or even to the point where you may never be able to like dance again or like have that same type of mobility again. So that for me helped push to really start mentioning it more in class instead of only when injuries happened. Just kind of like to remind them and let them know that, you know, there's a difference between I'm sore, I don't really feel like doing this, and like, oh, but I'm hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun list.
Mm-hmm, that was fun.
I'm gonna start going through this page more and just taking stuff from them. Sorry, I'll give y'all credit. Hold on. So if you are on Instagram, I'm gonna give these people their credit. The page is Dance Ed Tips. DANCEEDTIPS. Dance Ed Tips. And usually when I'm flipping through, I see stuff from them, and they usually have like a lot of good info. So y'all should check them out, subscribe to them, also follow them, whatever the hell you call it. They have some good tips and advice on that page. All right. Well, we thank you all for joining us here yet again at Dance Talk Realness. Be sure to like, comment, follow, subscribe, all that jazz across all the places where you can find us. If you have any questions or suggestions for us, feel free to drop us a line, and we look forward to bringing you some fresh new content next week. We'll see you then. Bye.